This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education of Medina City Schools District in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There's a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. If everybody will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Mr. Chambers, if you'll call roll call, please.
Sure. Mr. Hilberg.
Yes, he's here.
Ms. Markers.
Here.
Mr. Ross.
Here.
Mr. Skidmore.
Here.
Ms. Pavlik.
Here.
Thank you.
Are there any additions, removals, or modifications to the agenda? All right. Hearing none, I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
I'll second that.
I'm giving it to Rob.
Mr.
Okay.
Chambers?
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg.
Aye, he's having technical issues. Aye.
And Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Thank you.
And I just would like to note that Brian Hilberg is on video, but he's having some audio issues. But I can see him and he's nodding his head yes. So. Okay, at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Sable.
Great, thank you, and good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our virtual meetings. As much as I enjoy getting together with our board and having these conversations, I do have to admit it's nice to be at a meeting without a mask on. Today, before we get started, there's a couple things that I wanted to mention at the top of the meeting that aren't on the agenda. The first is related to public comment. I did want to make the public aware, anybody that is logged in watching us this evening, that in the past, we have tried to respond to some of the questions that we've received in the chats on social media. Those are not official public comments. It was us trying to be courteous to the people that were online and kind of step outside the box with the situation we were in order to answer questions. That's become difficult to sift through and make decisions on questions that need to be addressed and ones that do not. We've implemented a system through Zoom for people to participate in public comment. We are going to use the Zoom for this meeting as well. Amy Busby, I believe, is going to put the Zoom link into the social media feed once we get to public comment time. So I encourage anybody who has any public comment to make to log into the Zoom, and we'll actually pipe you into the meeting here, similar to what would happen in a live meeting. The second thing I wanted to point out is we do have quite a big change to our agenda that occurred this afternoon, and I just wanted to provide some explanation so people aren't wondering what's going on. The agenda items that have been removed are related to vaping and potential lawsuit between many districts and the Juul company, who was accused, maybe even prosecuted, I'm not sure, for developing ad campaigns as well as the flavored vapes, which was accounted for an increase or a potential increase in student use of the vapes. The lawsuit is relevant to the money that districts spent handling the vape issue. We're still spending through personnel as well as programs, anti-vaping, or even addiction programs for students addicted to nicotine. We just became aware last week of that possibility, and it was that specific lawsuit is being handled by a law firm that isn't currently approved by our Board of Education. I checked in with our legal counsel and had further discussion. And I think it's a good idea for the board to get more feedback from our own legal counsel before proceeding. So that's why those items were pulled from the agenda. Of course, we are against vaping, don't want to see any of our students in the position where they are vaping or using vapes, and we do take proactive measures at school to try and help those kids actually before even looking at punishment. The first official item on the agenda is a COVID update. Last week, with the county going purple, we did make an adjustment to our athletic and extracurriculars. Most of our extracurriculars can already be done virtually. We do have several, though, that do meet and do need to meet, such as our Encore is one example. Speech and debate might be another example. And then, of course, all of our athletics. With the county going purple, the high rate of COVID, we have made the decision to pause our athletic and extracurricular programs to outside interactions and competitions. And the reason is to provide more of a bubble for our students that are involved in those activities and to decrease their interaction with students from outside of the district. Within all of these organizations, athletics and extracurriculars, they all have COVID procedures that have been implemented and they are following. They are permitted to continue with practices and rehearsals per the COVID procedures. I know I've gotten a few questions about, well, we have our school online, how can we allow basketball to go practice? There's a couple reasons to that. The first reason is I have concerns about not having that type of activity available for our students. Getting our basketball team together, which might have 15 students on it to practice, is a very controlled environment as compared to a high school with 2,100 students in it, where it's much more difficult to control that environment. Extracurriculars and athletics play an important role in students' academic experience, and I'm sure I mentioned to the board before that studies actually show students involved in these types of activities perform at higher levels. So as long as we can continue to keep our students engaged in those activities, because they can't be done virtually, we want to try and do that. An additional concern that I have, and I know our athletic department has as well, is we are anticipating the seasons will go back into effect at some point. We'll be reevaluating that around December 17th, which is the same or similar date that the rest of our league has selected as well. And if students have a prolonged period of time off from competition and they're in a position where they're returning to competition cold, I am concerned about potential injuries if those students aren't continuing to work out and stay in shape during that time off. Again, we will be reevaluating on December 17th and providing another communication at that time. I'm hoping that at that time we have further information from the league as well. There has been some discussion, no decisions about the potential of pushing seasons back in order to better accommodate the winter sports season, which is more of a challenge than our fall or even our spring, simply because they're indoors. Any questions from the board in terms of COVID update? The other thing I did want to just quickly mention, and I'm sure our community or our parents have seen the regular updates we've been sending out. We have not seen a decrease in COVID cases. As you've seen from the letters we've been sending out, they've actually stayed quite high. That is due to students or staff members getting COVID outside of the school district through interactions, I think mostly with family or other groups that they're getting together with. The challenge that we face as a school district, and we were starting to see a little bit of COVID spread within the district the week or two before we went back to online, which obviously was very concerning. But overall, we have not seen a lot of COVID spread.
Mr. Samuel, if I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if I could ask a question real quick, or just interject a little comment with it. Obviously, I think we all want kids in school, and you've explained the rationale of why we've gone online. And I know there's been a lot of discussions with the board, and I think your communication to the community has been very clear. But I know recently, like the director of the CDC, Robert Redfield, made comments that felt that schools were the safest place for kids during the pandemic. And I know we've talked about it, but I think it's probably good to state why that's still an issue for us at this point, and the personnel and the factor that plays in that, if you could.
Yep, and that's what I was just going to talk about. The real issue that we're running into with COVID is staffing, and it's not just the COVID positive cases, but it's also the number of quarantines. When we have a large amount of our staff out, and when I say staff, I don't just mean teachers. I mean kitchen staff, custodians. We're talking about staff across the district. It's very hard to provide a high level of academics to our students. Getting substitutes, we've been saying all year, has really been a challenge during this COVID time. That's created a situation where we do a lot of spot coverages in order to get through the day. And what I mean by that is that we rotate teachers during their plan periods into classrooms to cover those classes. So we're in situations where there is not consistency within a classroom throughout the day, which you can see how that could have a major impact on the delivery of the instruction. Becomes even more of a challenge when you get a class like Latin, and I can't speak a word of Latin, but so if I was in there substituting, I would do the best I could, but it wouldn't be anything near what that teacher could deliver in that classroom. Another, I think, good example outside of the teaching staff, we did have a building where we had our entire kitchen staff that was out due to COVID for either quarantine or testing positive. In that situation, we would have had to normally close that building. We cannot operate without being able to have the lunches available for students. That particular building was able to remain open because that was after we had gone online with the high school as well as with Root. So we shifted kitchen staff from those two buildings to the other building to keep it going. So we are trying to think out of the box and make adjustments in order to keep our buildings functioning. The other piece besides just subs is, and this was particularly an issue at Root, when you start having a large amount of students out, we were running into situations where we would have 3 students in a classroom. So we had more students out due to quarantine or COVID than were actually attending. At that point in time, we have to ask ourselves for that class, is it more beneficial for a teacher to go virtual to teach all those students or stay in person? And to me, the obvious answer in that situation is to go virtual because you're reaching more students in the class. We're going to continue to monitor the COVID situation. I know we set the date of January 14th. That was based off of recommendations to move a couple weeks outside of the holidays, which is the typical quarantine period. That doesn't mean we will definitely go all the way to the 14th. Like I've said all along, this is a weekly reanalyzing of the situation. If we get into a position where things are really turning around in the county with COVID, our goal is to have our kids and our staff in our building, and we'll make the adjustments in order to make that happen. Any other questions about the COVID?
Mr. Sable, I just wanted to thank you. I know that you and your administration have had to make some very difficult decisions regarding this. And as we've said time and again, we know it's best for students to be in person. We want our kids to be in person. And that's why we really need the community to step up and do what they need to do. We all need to do our part. And if we are sick, we need to stay home. There's been cases of COVID where people think they just have a cold. They have a runny nose, and it turns out to be COVID. So if you are sick, stay home. If you were, call your doctor, see if you need to get tested, because if we could help stem the spread, we can get our students and our staff back in the buildings faster.
Thank you. The next item up is Calamity Days. We had our first Calamity Day, our snow day, last Tuesday, and I think it definitely caused some question and confusion in regards to how Calamity Days should or would be handled during this COVID era, which is a legitimate question, especially with the 3 or 4 different models that we have for academics, which could all be handled differently. So I've been working to put together some information and more of a guide for this school year in regards to how those Calamity Days will be handled. I did make the decision last week to call the Calamity Day for the entire district, despite the fact that our students were online. And the reason for that, and I'll take ownership for it, but the lack of communication with our community on how we were going to handle those days, I didn't want anybody to be caught into a position of a snow day where things were changed on them from how it's historically been handled. With being online, and I'm sure the other issue is that we have students that are actually in district now for special needs, and we were dealing with an issue in being able to provide services for those students and provide them in equal and education. And I'm going to try and share my screen here, and hopefully you will be able to see it. And hopefully you can see the draft Calamity Day protocol for the 2021 school year. We obviously, usually it's just we're in or we're not, but with all these different models of learning that we have, there's many more decisions that can be made. So if we are in online 3.0, which we currently are, I anticipate in the future that students will continue in their current online learning model. So in the future, if there's a snow day and we aren't in online 3.0, the teachers will continue to teach. They'll teach from home on that snow day and continue to provide instruction. Our students that are actually in session for face-to-face, they will transition to online lessons with their teachers for those days. And those teachers will teach from home as well. Face-to-face instruction, students and staff will have a Calamity Day as usual. If there are consecutive days needed, one of the things that I'm looking into and talking with other superintendents is making a transition to an online learning model. So what I mean by that, and I think the best example, 3-4 years ago, we had that really bad cold spell, and we had like 5 or 6 days that were called off. That would be a situation where I would want to limit the number of Calamity Days and transition to online. For a single day, I don't think it's fair to ask our teachers to be able to fully make that transition, because there is work involved for our staff in making the transition to online. But if it's multiple days, I think that's something that we should be able to do. And that's further discussion that I would like to have with our leadership team. And I think you're going to be seeing a lot of this kind of change across the state in terms of how those Calamity Days are handled. If we're in the hybrid learning model, students in face-to-face instruction will move to online 3.0, and students that are already in the online 3.0, the off-day students, will continue within that online 3.0 model. Medina Online Digital Academy is our MODA students. Those students are the families that selected to be online for the year. They will continue with their regular instruction online at home as they would with any other day. And then the last piece, as I had mentioned, we don't just have special education students, but we also have our Evolve students. And we also, our teachers are at the Juvenile Detention Center. They'll transition to an online 3.0 model. I would anticipate that at the Juvenile Detention Center, we will have to have more conversation. I'm not sure they have the capability of transitioning to a full online model. So that's something we'll have to have further discussion about. So we're in a little bit of a unique year here. I think it's important to make this information available to our community. I wanted to share it with the board before we got it out there and see if there's any questions.
So, Mr. Sable, so really the transition, if I understood correctly, if there's a one-off one-day snow day, the kids will have school off. We'll have a snow day. If we're in person or even hybrid, it's more if there would be multiple days. Is that correct?
Correct. That's where my thinking is.
Mr. Sable, will you post this on the district website just so that it can be referenced by parents easily?
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
And safety is important, and I know that played a large role in the decision this past week, and I do appreciate that our top priority is keeping our students and our staff safe.
Absolutely, and this is another one of those situations where there's multiple perspectives. You know, I definitely received some questions and comments from some parents wondering, well, why aren't we just continuing with 3.0 since teachers, and I'm going to clarify that, most teachers have the capability to do it from home. And I also got the other end. I received several parents reaching out who were appreciative to have the day and saw it as a much needed mental health day for their children that they got excited about. The traditional dropping ice cubes down the toilet and wearing pajamas backwards and playing in the snow the next day. But definitely not an easy decision, especially with the situation we're in, where we want and need to provide our kids with more academics. So hopefully this will provide more clarification.
I think Brian has a comment. Brian, we cannot hear you. Can you maybe type it in or text it?
Maybe he can also dial in.
I don't know if he said he'd try it or not.
If it's okay with everybody, I'm gonna move on with the agenda until we can come back. If
There you go.
Oh, here we
Aaron,
go.
I got it. After COVID, do you foresee this model being used for multiple snow days?
I do anticipate that. And Tina actually just today forwarded me, I think it was a national article that talked about snow days and how they would be handled by superintendents now that schools have made this transition to an online era. Again, with a single snow day, I anticipate it'll be a traditional snow day, but if it becomes multiple snow days in a row, that's where we'll be looking at transitioning to online. And it doesn't just keep academics going for our students, but it also assists with making sure that we get the days in so we don't have to add days at the end of the calendar, which we have had to do since my time here.
Right.
And now that we're all one-to-one, that makes it a lot easier as well than in the past. Than
Right.
with bags or things like that.
Brian, does that fully answer your question? Yes? Okay.
And the date for the 2021 organizational meeting, as well as discussing committee appointments. I don't know how much the board wants to discuss committee appointments this evening. I do have to say my time here that the committees have stayed pretty stable in terms of membership. I think generally board members have worked on joining committees where they either have an interest, and I think even more often where they have a little bit of background and can provide extra support to that specific group. The other thing I want to mention is the district calendar, which I sent out to the board the end of last week. And this relates directly to the organizational meeting dates. And I did take a look through this, and I do have a couple recommendations to the board. What Noreen has done is she's put together the calendar per the typical dates that are set each month. In looking at this, though, right now, the organizational meeting per the draft is on January 4th. I'm going to suggest that we move that organizational meeting to the next week, which I believe is January 11th. And the reason for that is January 4th is our first day back from the winter break. Typically, we've tried to avoid having board meetings that bump up to summer, winter, spring break. I was looking at the January work session, and if that would create a situation where it should be pushed back. Right now, it's scheduled for January 19th, which I believe is actually a Tuesday after Martin Luther King Day. If we were to push that regular meeting back, it would give us our regular meeting and our work session 2 weeks in a row at the end of January and then the beginning of February. So I'm not sure that there's a need to move that meeting. The other month that I wanted to make sure we looked at is August. It seems like every year we say we should take a closer look at that when we end up, like I was just saying, having a meeting the first day back from summer, which especially coming back from summer is a very busy time for us in the district. So I'd recommend that the Monday, August 2nd meeting actually be held on the 9th. That is a work session meeting. Moving it back puts it 1 week before the start of school. So if we have any late personnel to be approved by the board, it would move it closer to the start of school to get those in. In terms of the regular meeting, I want to suggest that we move it to August 23rd because August 16th is, again, the first day back. So that just moves it back 1 week after we get through our first week of school.
I don't see any problems moving those dates you suggested. Does anybody else?
Well, you're saying the organizational meeting on the 11th. That is the work session, right?
Well,
Not
yes,
mistaken.
I would have it combined with the work session, which is what we've done in the past.
Yes. Okay. That's what I thought.
I agree with all your.
That's what I thought.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ron. Go ahead.
No, that's what I thought. So if I heard you correctly, January 11th for the organizational / work session, and then
25th.
okay, wait, and then I didn't hear you. 25th for the regular meeting?
The 19th. So what
19th.
would happen is at the regular meeting, we need to make a recommendation to set the organizational meeting. Then at the organizational meeting is where the board typically sets all the board meetings and committee meetings for the year.
Yeah.
So the board, you do have time to continue to review these dates other than maybe the organizational meeting date prior to January, as well as deciding what you want to do with committee appointments. I just wanted to bring it up early so nobody's caught off guard.
Don't we, just one question, for the organizational meeting, aren't we required by the ORC to meet within a certain number of days at the beginning of the year to set our dates for our meetings?
Yeah,
You have the first 15 days to
15 days?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
my other comment, Aaron, is July 5th, as of course the day after the 4th. And I believe that will be the holiday as far as the federal holiday and the state holiday, as far as businesses, offices closed in some cases. So my suggestion would be to move the 5th as well in July.
I missed that one. I totally agree with you. And oftentimes in July, it obviously depends year to year, but that's often a work session that we'll end up canceling. But moving it back definitely makes sense. I think we ended up doing that this past summer.
I mean, maybe we tentatively move it to the 6th, and then if we need to cancel it, we just cancel it. But I mean, I'm just putting that idea out there.
I think it is scheduled for the 6th on here.
Oh, okay. I'm not looking at that. Okay. Where are you looking at?
Tuesday, July 6th.
Yeah, I don't have the paper. It's not in the agenda that I'm seeing here of the dates. So.
Yeah, did they get taken off, Aaron? Originally, they were on there.
They were sent out in the board update.
Okay.
Okay, but on Friday when we were going over this, they were attached here, weren't they?
Yep, I had them pulled off and sent them out in the update instead.
Okay. Now, if we move the regular meeting in January to the 25th, wouldn't that then just the following week be February's work session, correct?
Yep, that's why I'm suggesting to just keep the 19th as the regular meeting.
Okay, because either way, we're going to back up back to back, so.
Oh, I got you.
Okay.
Okay, I got you.
Are we going to move on to, I have a question about committees if we're done with the calendar. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So my question with the committees, Valerie and I were on the Business Advisory Committee, and I know that this year the district had their own advisory committee, but we joined in the fall with the countywide ESC. So I guess my question is, do we still need to have this committee and the assignments if we're part of the countywide Business Advisory Committee?
I'm going to let Tina jump in here. But when Tina and I initially discussed transitioning to the county, which to be honest with you, several of our local businesses that we were working with wanted us to do that because we were another meeting for them. we had talked about still running some of our own meetings so that we can make sure we're working specifically with our district located businesses. So I would anticipate that on a normal year, we might still have a couple of our own meetings, maybe not as many as we've had in the past. Am I correct, Tina?
Yeah, that's correct. We did want to keep in contact with the people that we had been meeting with because they were still supportive, and we wanted to keep that relationship up. But now that everything's been so crazy this year, we haven't done that. So we've just been getting acclimated to the new ESC committee, and we'll start that soon, or probably next year we'll start.
Now, Tina, whoever sits on that committee, would they also need to attend the ESC meeting as well?
No, I don't think so. Dave and I both go to the ESC committee meetings, and I think Carrie Schreck goes once in a while, and we can just report back if it's something our district, if it's something that, we'd like to bring back to the whole advisory committee. Otherwise, I can keep you guys appraised of what's going on there during the board curriculum meetings as well.
Okay.
I don't want you guys to have to go to another meeting. I know you guys go to a lot of meetings.
Yes.
Well, thank you for the clarification, because I do think it is important with the businesses that supported us to keep that communication going. So I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
All right. Any other? Is that it?
All I've got for you tonight, unless you have any other questions or comments.
Any of the board members have any questions or comments? Dates, committees?
On some of the committees, I know sometimes that first week of the month is around holidays at times and people are traveling. And I know the facilities and policy, and I don't know when your finance meeting, but I don't know. I'm just wondering if at some point we should revisit that and make sure that's the best week for everybody, But I think it'd be good to at least touch base with the committees at the beginning of the year to see what would be the best for them.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Our individual department heads, co-members, or organize those different committee meetings so they can go ahead, now that we've talked about or shared with the board those draft meeting dates for next year before January comes, so they can provide input if they have any.
And I'd also like to ask the board members that if there is interest in changing committees, to reach out to who is current, to the two members who are sitting on that committee, and see if anybody's interested in swapping or changing, or have any questions, if they wanted additional information for that.
Good idea.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Sable, you said that's all you had?
Yes.
Okay. This is when we've gotten to the public participation section of the meeting. And this is where, Amy, you're going to put up the Zoom link for public participation, correct?
It's currently on both Facebook and the YouTube channel. I think Jared is planning to put it up on the screen as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Community members wishing to address the board are asked to abide by the following guidelines. Attendees shall register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. After those that have registered have spoken, if time allows, the board president will ask for public participation from all other attendees. Please state your name, address, and affiliation. Please keep comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Give it a moment for Any responses from the public?
No, I just have Amy on the Zoom meeting.
All right. Well, hearing none, I am going to make the motion to move into executive session. Consider the employment of a public employee or official, and for discussion with the board's legal counsel of disputes involving the board that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. There will be no action taken after the meeting, and the board members, along with Mr. Sable, Mr. Chambers, Chris Qualick, and Jim Shields, will be in attendance.
Second. Second.
Mr. Chambers?
Okay, Ms. Pavlik,
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore,
Aye.
Mr. Hilberg,
He nodded yes.
Parkhurst,
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Thank you.